Hello, everybody. I'm Joyanne Haig. We welcome our viewers and listeners in Barbados and around the world to another edition of Face It and Fix It on CBC TV 8, Facebook, YouTube, and of course, Q100.7 FM radio. Now, what's on my mind today? A couple of things, a lot of things actually, but I'm going to talk about two things. Yesterday, I watched a town hall meeting. It was held by the government of Barbados on vaccines and testing, and a few things came to mind. It amazed me the amount of information that we get every day, but yet we don't seem to either grasp it as quickly as we can, which is fine, and it's good to have these town hall meetings, but some questions came up yesterday and people challenging doctors, etc. And I think it's fine for us to ask questions, but for me, I'm not a medical practitioner, so if I go to my doctor and they tell me what to do, if I'm not satisfied, I'll get a second opinion. But if two people are singing the same tune, then you'd have a tendency to believe them. But one of the things that stood out in my mind was people questioning about if this is a vaccine or not, and someone said that the Oxford Dictionary quoted something different. I'm not sure if they recognize that there is something called a medical dictionary as well, and maybe would have that information in greater detail. But I'm glad to see that the government is engaging the public on these issues. Again, my personal belief, I took the vaccine. It's a choice for people to do so, but I'm hoping that people get the right information, and hopefully sooner rather than later, we can have a show on miscommunication. In addition to that, what's on my mind? Food prices. I'm a little bit worried at the end of the month when I do shopping. Can I afford chicken? Can I afford processed meat and even vegetables? So to talk to us today about some of these issues pertaining to COVID-19 and the Pfizer vaccine, we welcome, again, Specialist Emergency Physician Dr. Brian Charles to the program. And later we have James Paul, my apologies, Mr. James Paul, as well as Mr. Henderson Williams. Henderson Williams is the president of the Pig Farmers Association, and Mr. James Paul is the chief executive officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society. So we will welcome them later on in the show, but after the break, we're going to speak to Dr. Brian Charles. But remember to call us 228-5563, 228-5562, to send us a WhatsApp message. It's 228-5562. And of course, your comments on Facebook, CBC Barbados. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are now about to speak to Dr. Brian Charles, Specialist Emergency Physician. He's no stranger to the show. Welcome back, Dr. Charles.
Thank you very much. Good morning, all.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Not too bad today at all. Not too bad.
Well,
Yourself?
I'm holding on like everyone else, trying to ignore misinformation and paying attention to the correct information, and I want to encourage people to do that. But
Yes.
as you know, we continue the discussion on COVID-19, and now we're into a serious discussion about the vaccines. And it has been brought to our attention that we're going to be blessed with 70,000 doses, I believe, of Pfizer vaccine coming in on Friday. People are going to have some questions. Of course, we've heard some negative things about the vaccine, positive, negative about Pfizer, negative about Sinopharm. What are your views, or what have you been hearing as the medical practitioner with the correct information? Should we be worried about Pfizer versus maybe the Sinopharm, AstraZeneca? What's in the Pfizer vaccine, and should we be concerned about it?
So the first thing I would like to say is that we are, as you said, blessed to be able to have had a number of AstraZeneca vaccines and then the Sinopharm vaccines and now the Pfizer vaccines that are coming. There are many countries in the world that are not able to get vaccines for their populations. In fact, there are several countries that have not had any vaccinations at all or very few vaccinations. And we are doing quite well in that the government has procured vaccinations for the society for at large, and that's really very commendable. What is a little bit worrying and disturbing is that even though these vaccines have been made available to us by and large, that we had the uptake has kind of fallen off, and for reasons some of which you have just mentioned about misinformation, maybe miscommunication, suspicion on the vaccines. That could be those are some of the reasons why the vaccine rollout has fallen off. The Pfizer vaccine that's coming is a little different from the other two vaccines that we have had, in that the Pfizer vaccine is what we call an mRNA vaccine. But that's just a technological term. Basically, it works very well, and all the vaccines that we are using have been approved by the WHO, the World Health Organization, for safe use to prevent serious illness and death from COVID. As I've stressed before in our programs, and I want to stress it again right at the beginning, the vaccine does not prevent you from getting COVID. You can still get infected. But if you get infected, the chance of you getting seriously ill and dying is very low. And I think this is the point that is not really accepted or not really understood by the population at large. They think that because you say vaccine and because a vaccine is being offered by the medical fraternity, that it means that you're not going to get COVID. And that's not true. No one ever said that. The studies have never said that. Science has not proven that it doesn't prevent it. What it does is that it reduces the chance of getting seriously ill and of dying from the disease. And also, it reduces the transmissibility. That means it reduces the number of people who you can transmit COVID to if you get infected. So, by and large, it's a very good thing that we're getting Pfizer. And one other thing I want to say too, Pfizer has been approved for children 12 years and above, 12 to 18, which the other vaccines have not been approved. So that's a very good thing because we can now start to inoculate and vaccinate the younger members of our population, giving us more widespread protection.
So the Pfizer vaccine, we're hearing that they're now asking about or talking about a third shot, a booster shot. Would that be applicable for the other vaccines as well? As we're seeing or hearing that the efficacy, it sort of peters off a little bit after a period of time. What are we seeing, and what is the science saying about these vaccines to date?
Right. So far, only Pfizer has come out to say that it is very likely that a third booster shot is going to be needed. And it is still not the recommendation that a third shot is going to happen, but it's more than likely it will be needed. But similarly, I won't be surprised if all the vaccines will need booster shots as time goes on. And the reason for this is that viruses change, viruses mutate, and because they change, the strength or the ability for the vaccine to work, or for your body, your immune response, when your immune response has been jacked up from from the vaccine, if the viruses change as time goes on, then we may need to tweak those vaccines and give you a booster shot so that you have more widespread coverage. The other reason why boosters may be necessary is that as time goes on, the immune response, this is the body's natural fighting ability against the virus, decreases. Currently, we are not sure how fast and how long the decrease, how the pattern or the trend of the decrease is for the other vaccines. So as we continue to study and monitor this, we will then get an idea as to when and how often the booster shots may be needed. I would like to just remind persons, just to put it into context, that the influenza vaccine, we get an influenza vaccine booster every year, every single year, because the virus changes. So we have to change the vaccine to suit what the virus has done. And this is similar, this is likely what's going to happen with SARS-CoV-2 as time goes on.
So the Pfizer vaccine, how far apart will we get the first and the second? Is it still the same 10 weeks, 12-week period for Pfizer?
4 to 8 weeks. 4 to 8 weeks is the recommended, and but if you get a booster, at 10 weeks, 12 weeks, it's still going to work. This is your second shot at 10, 12 weeks. It's still going to work and boost that immunity. So that's good for us. Remember, the AstraZeneca and the Sinopharm also have the second dose that is needed. It's only the Johnson & Johnson that is using one dose at this current time. So yes, so second doses will be the order of the day for the Pfizer that's coming here as well.
Do we know if they have in any blood products? I'd asked this question on the AstraZeneca on behalf of the Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, for people who may be concerned. Would the Pfizer vaccine have any blood products in it that those for religious reasons might be concerned about?
Right. None of the vaccines have any blood products in them. The vaccines, just to reiterate, the vaccines have the ones that are being used right now. So, for example, the AstraZeneca uses the spike protein that is attached to another attenuated virus, which means another virus that doesn't really cause any illness. That's the AstraZeneca. The Sinopharm, which is what we've been used, is the SARS-CoV-2 virus that has been denatured, so it cannot cause any issues when given into your body. The Pfizer vaccine carries a small strip of messenger RNA, which causes your body to make the spike protein. And when your body makes the spike protein, we then mount an immune response to it. So those are the basic things that are in all those vaccines. And then the solutions then come with different things that make them able to be injected, make them able to be transported, make them able to be stored. And none of them contain the blood products so that it should not be an issue for persons who do not wish blood products. And I would say too, remember early on the conspiracy theories of having a chip and having all those things, all those conspiracy theories are not true, and really, as you said, misinformation to throw us all off so that we will not be likely to take it. But the vaccines are not experimental. I will be the first to say that they are early in their use, so we don't know what the long-term side effects are, but we know that COVID has a high likelihood of serious illness and death for those persons who are at risk and vulnerable. So even though we don't know what the long-term side effects, persons who are vulnerable have a short-term side effect of dying if they get COVID. And that's where the risk-benefit ratio comes in. The risk of long-term side effects years down the line that we don't know of versus the benefit of preserving life and preserving the way that we know living used to be before COVID.
Well, let's now explain now to the Barbadian public as simple as we can, because I like to simplify. Life should be like that, including people explaining vaccines and so on and so forth. Science, and you please correct me if I am wrong, is about statistics, not that we are only just a statistic. We are human beings, but on a wider scale, when we are doing testing, in particular in this case for vaccines, let's just say that you tested a vaccine on 100 people. 98 did wonderful, did well. 2 had a reaction. To science, that is a win. Is that not correct? We deal with statistics. Statistics. When we vote, we deal with statistics. When everything in life is about numbers. When 9/11, for example, happened, and 250 souls were on board of a plane, and the government knew if they had the opportunity, they would have shot down the plane. Unfortunately, 250 souls in order to save the many. Again, statistics. I'm saying all of that to say this. The amount of people who have died from a vaccine is way lower than the amount of people who have died from COVID. So to the persons who are out there saying that the vaccine will kill you, even though these things can happen because you can have some effects, nothing in life is 100%. I think people are looking to doctors to make it 100%, but it can't be. So wouldn't it be safe to say, I think we had some statistics that maybe 0.006% of people might have died. Let's say maybe there were 600. Let's say even if it was 2,000 versus the close to 4 million souls that have gone from COVID. If people are using masks and talking about statistics, the vaccine saves more lives. The vaccine is killing less people, but COVID is exceeding that. And I want you to expand on that for people who may not be able to understand. It's about statistics. This is how we come up with the science. This is how we come up with how we know something is working. We go with the majority. It is unfortunate that some people may die as a result of saving lives. But you guys in the medical fraternity, you're here to save lives. And I'm hoping that people understand that there's no conspiracy here. And if it is, it's the biggest one I've ever seen, you know, and I think that somebody would have had to said something by now. So I just want you to expand a little bit about these statistics about deaths from vaccines, in particular this particular vaccine, Pfizer, whether it's AstraZeneca for the COVID, versus deaths from COVID itself. If you can expand on that, hit it home.
Let me see if I can break this down. Allow me a little bit of time to do so. The first thing is that the medical profession, all doctors have taken an oath to help humanity, to always do good and to never do harm intentionally. Also, we have an ethics that allow us to preserve the autonomy. This is the autonomy of the patient or the client or society. So choice, we do respect choice, and we do understand what the choice is, and you have to make that choice for yourself. But when you make the choice, we would like you to make the choice on very good, sound information and sound science. Now, nothing, no medication, no procedure that we do, never is 100% fail safe. There's always going to be some very small level of harm possible. And I give you some examples. Very simple things like paracetamol. We can go in the store and buy paracetamol, but paracetamol is not a harmless drug. You can get side effects from something as simple as paracetamol. You can go and use medications, aspirin, and all of these medications, as simple as they may seem and very well accepted, can have side effects. And some of these side effects can include death. The vaccines have been designed to try the best to prevent death and serious illness. Now, if you look at the statistics, and let's go from the AstraZeneca and the blood clotting that we saw in April and May. The association of the vaccines to clotting and death is lower than the association of the oral contraceptive pill and clotting and death.
Dr. Charles,
Yes,
I
please.
want to take a quick break and let us continue. We got to take one break and we'll be right back. One break.
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. Dr. Charles, I don't want you to lose your train of thought. We have a call and we want to take this call to ask a question. Good morning, Face It and Fix It. You're on the air.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. You may want to turn off.
I don't have anything on feedback. If it's me that is on.
Well, I'm getting feedback in my ears.
So,
note to the producer.
Charles, I would like to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
I can go ahead?
Go ahead.
When you go into a supermarket, all they does is take a temperature. No name, no phone number, nothing. Let's say, for argument's sake, that some person in there have the virus. I was in the supermarket the same time that I was in there. How would I know that I don't have, I haven't caught the virus from the person that was in there? Before I let you talk, I feel that all supermarkets should have a ledger with names and phone numbers, that they would know if some person going there with this new variant and this asymptomatic. I feel that when you go to Care Shepherd to take your picture, at least they got a picture of me that they can put in the paper and tell me, look for the nearest polyclinic. But when you go to the supermarket, anybody got it, how they going to know that I wasn't there?
I'll let Dr. Charles respond.
Thank you very much, caller, for the question. The question speaks to a term we call contact tracing. And it's important that if someone turns to be positive, we find out who they may have been in contact with. So I would probably like to refer this to the COVID monitoring team to find out what recommendations they've made for the ledgers at the supermarkets, etc.
All right. Caller, I don't know if you got that. Okay, well, okay. But Dr. Charles, if you can, please continue before the break. You were saying to us.
Sure, thank you. So before the break, we were speaking about the science and the safety of vaccines and pharmacological agents. And I was saying just a while ago that nothing that we use in the medical science is 100% safe. There are always some degree of side effects or adverse effects, and sometimes even death from medications and procedures that we use and that we do. And I gave examples of paracetamol, and which is Panadol, and aspirin. They can have side effects that are deadly. But at the same time, the vaccines were designed to prevent the serious illness and death, as I said before. Now, 4 million plus people have already died from COVID, and people have shown a hesitancy, or what I heard now is called vaccine reluctance, because of the side effects that have been noted, like the clotting from AstraZeneca and like the myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart from Pfizer, etc. Now, I just want to give some statistics, and just to break it down very, very simply. The clots from the vaccine, AstraZeneca, is less likely than clotting from taking the oral contraceptive pill. Clots from smoking are less likely than clots from the vaccine. Clots from when you are pregnant are much less likely than when you're taking the vaccine. But I don't hear people saying, well, I'm not going to take the oral contraceptive pill. And I'm not hearing people saying, well, I'm going to stop smoking. And I'm not hearing people saying that I'm going to stop getting pregnant because I can get clots. The fact of the matter is that there are side effects to everything, but the side effects are low. The relations between the vaccines and Bell's palsy, and the vaccines and Guillain-Barré syndrome, the vaccines and myocarditis, all of those things are documented. Yes, these things can happen, but the likelihood of these things happening are so low that it is not scientifically, it is not something that will prevent us from using the vaccine. So That's why we say that the vaccine is safe, because the likelihood of getting those effects are very low. So statistically, the chance of you getting a clot from the vaccine is about one in, I think it's 60,000 or 600,000. I mean, that's very remote. The chance of you dying from the vaccine is even more remote. But the chance of you dying from COVID is 2 in 100. So 2 in 100 versus, 1 in several thousands make it recommended and make it safe. The other thing that I've heard, and I keep hearing on social media, and I keep in my discussions with clients and with the general public, is that the vaccine is experimental. What is the experiment? I'm not sure what is the experiment, whether it wants to prove that we can save lives, because to me, that's not an experiment. I would want to save as many lives as possible. That's what the medical fraternity does. We want to save lives. If by saving lives, we get a few adverse effects, a few side effects, like with every other drug, then that's my job is done, and that's not a problem. But the science is there. It is not experimental, and it is safe to use as by the figures and the statistics. And anyone, I would implore you to please make sure you get the correct information, especially before going on broadcasts and social media to try to sell a different agenda, because it is against the medical fraternity, and it's really difficult. I had a colleague from Trinidad who messaged me day before yesterday, who said that a friend of his called him to say that my family is dying of COVID, and we don't want to take the vaccine. And he said he just didn't know what to say, because he's been trying to convince them to get the vaccine. And all I could say is, listen, the fight and the struggle is real. Please continue to support them, even if they do not wish to take the vaccine. But make sure you give them the correct information so that they would have the correct choice.
And I can agree with that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is the fact that people said this is not a vaccine. They're not, there are different types of vaccine, and you might want to explain that, because growing up, and if I'm not mistaken, I thought I had mumps. So Mom, if you're watching, I'm not sure if you vaccinated me or not. I probably was born before the time, I'm not sure. But if these vaccines they're different types of vaccines. So how different is this one from the ones that we get as babies? That's
Right.
supposed to stop us from catching, the mumps and measles, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. A vaccine is any agent that is introduced or can be introduced into the body, which causes the body to mount an immune response to fight against a disease that can cause more dangerous and devastating illness. That's it, by and large. There are different types of vaccines. There are vaccines that cause sterilizing immunity, like the smallpox vaccine. Once we had the smallpox vaccine, which was in the 60s and the 70s, we managed to eradicate smallpox completely. There are other vaccines that don't do a sterilizing immunity, which means it doesn't completely eradicate or prevent you from getting the disease, but it will prevent it. The chances of you getting sick are much less. So, for example, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, influenza, small chicken pox, all of those hepatitis, hep TB, all of those are vaccines that we have had. We have had, and our forefathers have given these to us to protect us. And I can say again, how many people, especially like in Barbados, have seen anyone with polio? And that's because of the very successful mass vaccination program, which was done by the public health officials in the 70s and the 80s. There's no polio. Where I grew up in Dominica, we still have one or two cases of polio because persons were not vaccinated. More recently, you would have remembered that there was a mumps and a measles outbreak in the United States in 2016.
Yes.
Why was that? Because persons refuse to get vaccinated against measles and mumps and rubella. So if you don't get vaccinated, what happens is that the virus starts to reestablish itself in the population, and then you start to get sick. And just coming back to you and your mom, even though you got mumps, doesn't mean that mom didn't immunize you against mumps. Because remember, there are some breakthrough infections. So, mom, rest assured, you'll be okay.
Sorry, Mom, if you're watching, if you did vaccinate me, I'm so sorry. But here's the thing, right? You're vaccinated, you're vaccinating babies, so we really can't say we've eradicated anything 100%. Because if you did, there'd be no need to vaccinate babies against the things that we're talking about.
Yes.
So the mere fact that people caught mumps and measles in 2016, again, like the COVID vaccine, it reduces, it minimizes, but there must have been some sort of breakthrough. Have there been breakthrough cases, not only for COVID, but for other things? Because nothing is 100%. And I think that we need to understand that the best will in the world, people are trying to save our lives. I mean, when I wanted the information about if I should take one of my daughter's, Sky, everybody knows Sky has Down syndrome, was born with a complete endocardial cushion defect in her heart, everything, the whole works, surgery, one valve, patches, you name it. So I called Dr. K, a pediatrician. You know, she's not longer under his care, but she's 21. But obviously he looked up for her 18 years. And when he said to me, persons with Down syndrome, you know, they really haven't been doing well in this pandemic. And this was a couple months ago. He said, of course, I would recommend. So what I'm asking the public, you go to your doctors for advice. You take every piece of medication in most cases that they tell you, and you don't even look at the fine print. I don't, you know, they may look for the directions, but already written there by the doctor. We can't even pronounce half the stuff inside of these things, and we take them. What is the problem when your own physician strongly recommends? No one can force you, because even in regular medicine, pre-COVID, doctors can't force you to do anything. They can only recommend. So if your doctor recommends that this vaccine is safe enough for you to take, I'm trying to figure out, why are we listening to other people who are nowhere near medically trained to make a decision? You want to weigh in on that?
I have an idea why this has come about, and this is not just thing of yesteryear. This has been in development over the last 5-10 years. Basically, we have graduated from a society of reading, listening to elders and advisors and specialists, to one of a digital age where everything is at our fingertips. We use our phones, we use our devices for everything, and information is always there and ready. Now, that information can spread from one part of the world to another part of the world in a matter of seconds because of the internet. Unfortunately, some persons have used this medium because of their own agendas. You know, the more people that subscribe to me, the more people that like me, the more people that look on my channel, the more popular I am. And even there's a financial reward. If you look at YouTube, the more people that go on to any YouTube channels, you can get rich off that. Now, because we use the social media for entertainment and for information, now when something serious like COVID has come about, whereby persons with doubt, and there's nothing wrong with doubting, the information. You don't have to take everything that I say as gospel, but what I would like you to do is to weigh in on the facts and weigh in on, as you said, the statistics, and make a good choice. Now, because everything is so readily available to be uploaded and distributed, and it can be distributed so quickly, then we have moved away from a society that is more that is traditional, to a society that is really digital, and we can get everything immediately. And that, to me, is the real reason why it is so difficult to get this message across. Now, you and I say, well, look, why is it you don't listen to your doctor? And I understand, because persons who come, not even before COVID, people will come to the clinic with their symptoms written on Dr. Google, with a diagnosis from Dr. Google and a treatment from Dr. Google. When they come and present to you now, the physician, they are telling you what Dr. Google says, and because Dr. Google has been all over the internet. They now trust Dr. Google far more than your medical intuition, which you have trained for many years. I mean, I've been a practicing physician for 32 years. I still have people who come to say, well, doc, are you sure? Because I read up, somewhere, and I don't want to say where, but I read up somewhere that, maybe we should do this or maybe we should do that. So I'm coming to you to get this and that. And this is the reason why it is so difficult to have this COVID message and the vaccine message come across. And I completely understand it, but it's the world that we live in right now.
Well, and public, please don't get me wrong, because there's a situation where people will go like, I know my body better than a doctor. That is true. You know how you feel, because it's only obvious you will have to know how you feel, hence the reason you go to a doctor. And if they prescribe something for you and it doesn't make you feel right, obviously mistakes, I wouldn't even call it a mistake, but things can happen where you then find out you're allergic to penicillin, for example. But when we come back after the break, we're going to have some more questions for you. We'll be back.
Please.
Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We're here talking to Dr. Brian Charles. Dr. Charles, I was saying before the break that we know our bodies, yes, and we know how we feel for the most part, but we normally go to doctors to help make sense of what's happening in our bodies so that we can heal. The thing about doctors is this, take this in the nicest way. Doctors do not necessarily save lives for like forever. Because people have this thing that, okay, I'm going to my doctor. We're not going to live forever. Let us just get that out there. A doctor literally extends your life by either making you comfortable, giving you the right medication, possibly even looking at the particular ailment, and that's gone, but something else may come. Nothing even to do with the first. So doctors extend our lives. We don't live forever. But if a doctor is trying to tell you, look, I'm gonna recommend you take this vaccine in an effort to extend your life, to make sure that you don't die from this horrible disease, which, by the way, people, you die alone. No one can visit you when you're in a hospital.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
you barely get to FaceTime. Unlike other ailments, when you have some time, the doctors can call you and tell you, hey, come down, your mom is not looking too good. That doesn't happen with COVID. They die alone. So all of these things that I'm hoping that people think about. And again, we can't mandate, as we're hearing about if people, the mandating of vaccines and things like that. But here's the thing. You have a right to freedom of choice. It's your body. You don't have the right to do harm. Similarly, you have all right to drink as much extra oil rum and silver, and sorry for the brands, CBC, but alcohol as much as you want because it's your liver. But what you don't have the right to do is to go behind the wheel of a car and drive, because then you become a problem to the public. So for me, and I don't know how you feel about vaccinations, and I'm not going to put you in that spot about mandating because you're a doctor, but I think people have to understand that life is going to be very different for vaccinated persons and unvaccinated persons, and we cannot call it discrimination because discrimination does not apply to things that hurt you. People discriminate against black people. Black can't hurt you. Fat people, disabled people, that cannot hurt you. That's wrong. But if you want to come into, say, my nightclub or my restaurant, and these are the things that you need to remove your mask. I'm not talking about the essential things in life, shopping and supermarket and healthcare and education. But in all fairness to business owners and workers, if you are operating in an environment that you have to take this down, that becomes a risk. So I understand in New York now, they have mandated now vaccinated persons for recreational purposes. You can vaccinate, you can go into a restaurant, you're vaccinated, the theater, the gyms. So what they're trying to say is, hey, all the fun things you can continue to do. Those who are not vaccinated, unfortunately, cannot do the fun things because the fun things require pulling that down. So is that fair to say? There's a question here quickly. What do you mean by immune compromised? Person wants to know.
So I'll answer this question first and then go to your comment. So immune compromised means that your immune system or your body's defenses against any foreign agent is not working as good as it should. So there are many diseases that cause you to be immune compromised. For example, a very simple and very common one is diabetes. Diabetics are immune compromised. Persons who are taking steroids for a long period of time are immune compromised. People with cancers are immune compromised. So those are the what we mean by immune compromise. Your body cannot fight as it should. So I'm hoping that answers your question. Now back to Joanne, your comment, and I like your analogy. You have freedom of choice, so if you want, you can go and drink as much alcohol as possible. But that doesn't mean that you should be responsible or irresponsible and get in a vehicle and drive because you're going to affect others. That's a very good analogy that can be put in this COVID context. My personal feeling is that I understand the concern about the mandating, and I would like to remove that word completely. No one is going to mandate anything on anyone because you have autonomy, you have that freedom of choice. But that freedom of choice also comes with a duty of responsibility. And just because COVID does not cause young people or persons who are not vulnerable to be sick and likely to die or to be hospitalized or go into ICU, doesn't mean that there are not others in the community that have the same level of risk as you do. So because you are young and you don't have that level of risk, you may say, well, I don't need to take the vaccine. And if I catch COVID, I catch COVID. But then you are spreading it to other people who may get very ill.
Providing that young person is not immunocompromised, because there are a lot of young people out there. And I can tell you, there are a lot of youngsters out there that drink every day. I mean, I can tell you that exactly, the livers may not be looking too healthy. Now, do you want to find out that you are not doing too well in the liver department by catching COVID? I mean, it's not about scaring them. Right. These are the facts. You are young, but doesn't mean you're strong, because things can happen. Correct. You know, things can happen. Right. So go ahead.
Then the other thing about the being responsible is that use the information. Now, you said that the doctors recommend that you take the vaccine. Now, I really tell people, hey, listen, if you don't want to take the vaccine, you don't want to take it. But make sure your decision is based on information that allows you to make the correct decision. So I will not tell a client or a patient or even a relative or friend, you go and take that vaccine because it's not the right way to do it. They should be able to say, well, look, all right, these are the facts. These are the pros, these are the cons, and I'm going to go with this one and I will make the decision to take the vaccine. Now, if all of us approached it like that, there will be no discussion about mandating to take a vaccine. There will be no discussion about businesses making their businesses and their practices safe because it will be automatic. Persons will want to be safe. Persons will want the clients that come into the business and support the business to be safe. The healthcare workers, the frontline workers, the persons in security, all of those who realize that I am going to be in contact with other people who may be vulnerable. So I want to protect myself and I want to protect them by being vaccinated. So those are the things that I say with regards to the question about mandating. I don't like the discussion on mandating. I like to say responsible choice. And with the responsible choice, to make the responsible choice, you need information. And that information is based in the science and statistics, just as you said a few moments ago.
You see, you're correct, because normally human beings, in particular ones that are not that mature, if you want a child to do something, tell them don't do it. If you understand what I mean with psychology about it. If you use that word, mandate, and you're forcing, this generation, and even before, but they would say, listen, you can't tell me what to do. This is my body. And
Correct.
Truthfully, they're correct. So it's the approach and the communication, and I say this because of what I do for a living. How we explain this cannot be one brush for everybody. People understand things in different ways, different methods, whether it's song, with their friends. We could be saying the same thing, but in different words, or mean the same thing. You have to communicate it in a different way. The language we use can cause, as we see in some other countries, people to protest. And
That's
so
right.
this whole thing about mandating, I mean, truthfully, I do wish the Prime Minister and her cabinet the wisdom of King Solomon while moving forward to make these types of decisions. And for me, I think that we should put into law at least the external things, the things that are not invasive. Wear a mask, sanitize, social distance. That's what I think we should do. Everything else, we would then have to hopefully give information, because a lot of people just want to wait. And I get that. They're not against this vaccine or that vaccine. They're a little bit hesitant. I understand that. They want to see whether or not you and I would probably grow an extra head, I don't know, a tail. They want to know. They want to know if it's going to impact pregnancy. And I think that is fair. But while you wait, you must practice safe protocols, safe methods. While you wait, you cannot or should not go out there and impact anyone with a possible infection. So if you know you have been exposed, I understand there was an individual who got a call and it was not picked up right away, went out, knowing. Now, I remember HIV back in the days. We're going to read that WhatsApp quickly. It was a criminal offense at some point. I think if you knew you had HIV and you did not divulge that to your partner, you were charged. So if someone has been contacted and said, listen, your results came back positive, we're going to pick you up in such and such a time, and you decide you're going down the road, and people find out and you have knowledge, that should be a charge, because you're putting people at risk with knowledge. And this is the things that government obviously would have to be worried about. But I beg, I beseech Barbadians. I mean, I have my mom, they have their mothers. There's some people who may not care for the elderly. There's some children that might not have any respect. But for the most of us, we do. And it's against that background. If you have care and compassion in your heart, you do not want to take the vaccine, please, for God's sake, do not do any harm. I want to read that WhatsApp to you before you go, and the WhatsApp came up on the screen. It says, are there other ways of testing for COVID than the nose swabs? I'm hearing you can either do throat or nose, or what is it now? Is it changed?
And currently, this gold standard is a nasopharyngeal swab, which is a very small swab that goes into your nostril, down into the back of the throat. It gives a little tickle, 10 seconds, and it's back out. That's the gold standard. We have had persons who cannot tolerate the nasopharyngeal swab, persons who have frequent nosebleeds and that kind of stuff. And we may change that to an oropharyngeal swab where you put it through your mouth, but that's not the ideal. Remember, the virus resides in the nasal passages, goes down into the throat and then into the lungs. And so we want to catch the maximum amount of virus as possible on that swab. So that's why the nasal swab is the best way of doing the test. There are other tests like saliva. There's one for saliva. It's not highly recommended, but persons are doing it in other countries. I wouldn't take that chance here. We will always stick to what's the best science and the gold standard, which is the nasopharyngeal swab for the PCR testing.
We're going to be back after the break with more with Dr. Charles. We'll be back. Okay, well, we're saying right now, unfortunately, we do have to wrap up. So I'm going to give you final words, Dr. Charles, because when we come back, we do have our other guests. My apologies. Final words to you, sir.
Final words. Science, nothing is 100%. Remember that the vaccine has been designed not to prevent you from catching COVID, but to prevent you from getting seriously ill, prevent you from dying, reducing the transmission of the virus to other persons. So, use the facts that we're providing you, like in programs like this, to make a good choice, a responsible choice to fight this disease. And let's try and get back to living as it used to be pre-COVID.
I said final words, thank you, but I just wanted to throw in there, kindly don't listen to the voice notes that anything that starts with Suzanne or Mildred girl, this is what happened that's usually a red flag that you're not supposed to either even share it, but people actually are listening to other people's voice notes. They don't even have a clue who they are. So from the time you hear, man, I just come back from the hospital and I was outside in the meeting and I hear dismiss, dismiss it, delete. And, and I'm hoping that the public, yes, exactly. So I want to thank you so much and hopefully we'll see you again. I know we will. So until such time, remain safe and thank you so much for coming to the show. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Vaccines, as we know, it's not the only thing that we're talking about, COVID. There's so much more happening in Barbados and around the world. But one of the things that I know that it's going to concern many Barbadians, especially by the end of the month, is that on the heels of the price hike of gas prices, we are now hearing that you will see an increase in chicken as well as maybe some processed meats and vegetables. This is in a response to what's happening globally. Prices have gone up. Government had to end their 3-month subsidy to one of the main manufacturers of feeds. And I know this is of some concern to many. Farmers are already having a tough time as it is with the rise in water rates over the last 2 years. Now they're going to see another hike in feeds. What does that mean to us as consumers? Will we be able to afford chicken, pork, beef, all of the meats that we enjoy every day? I know Barbadians probably eat more chicken and pork than anything else. So we really are hopeful that some solutions will come. One of the things that I want to mention before we speak to our guests and they log on, because we're waiting now to speak to Mr. James Paul, the CEO of BAS, and Henderson Williams, president of the Pig Farmers Association. I believe that they're now with us. But before I say that, one of the things I'm hoping for, and as you know, I used to work at the Barbados Water Authority when they introduced the sewage and garbage tax. There was a committee, there is a committee set up that you can write to give waivers to persons who cannot afford. And one of those things that I had mentioned back then, and I'm still going to advocate for now because I am a registered farmer recently for vegetables, is that we really need to see an ease in the water prices for farmers at least. I'm not talking about the whole thing, but certainly now that we see farmers having to pay more money for feeds, we might want to balance it out a little bit by going back now to the water tax and the water rates and see how best an adjustment can be made for farmers so that we all can eat in this country. I want to welcome Mr. James Paul, the CEO of the Barbados Agricultural Society, and Mr. Henderson Williams, president of the Pig Farmers Association of Barbados. And I understand, Henderson, you also sit on the board at BAS?
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
okay,
I'm also director at the BAS.
Okay, so James, I know I can call you James because we know each other in Henderson. I refer to you as Henderson so that people don't feel I'm being disrespectful. So James, I hope you're well. What are some of the challenges that are going on right now with the COVID-19 and in terms of what's happening at the BAS? But before you go into that, just tell the public exactly what is the BAS and what you do for persons who are now tuning in and may not necessarily know the function.
The BAS is not a commodity group, sorry, it's an association of groups, commodity groups. And in that respect, we have different commodity associations being, for instance, eggs, poultry. We have sheep farmers, pig farmers, dairy farmers. Also, of course, we have fruit and vegetable farmers. We have beekeepers. In other words, different groups involved in the production of different agricultural commodities. And they come under one body, which is the BAS. We are the secretariat, and we, of course, provide services to the organizations and lobby on their behalf.
Okay. All right, just for those who may not know, so how has COVID affected your organization, and from start to now, what are some of the challenges that you've been getting?
Well, there are some challenges in terms of the fact that in terms of our operation, we are not able to do certain things that we normally do. For instance, our field activities are actually very impacted as a result of this. And we have had to curb that in some ways. So there are things that have happened that we cannot do, and we will not be able to service farmers in the same way.
Okay, Henderson, to you, with the Pig Farmers Association, how has the increase in the feed prices, how will it impact the pig farmers? And I say that to say this, I was not sure until last night I spoke to someone. I remember back in the days we used to feed pigs with scraps. So to me, I'm thinking, but that was back in the day, people would just say, well, look, we got the pig food. So obviously times have changed and things have changed. People have to buy feed, etc. for pigs. How has this, and how will this impact the pig farmers with these price hikes?
Well, thank you so much, Joyanne, first for having us on the show. The challenge that we face with the Pig Farmers Association and certainly the BAS is a serious one because we are not only talking about increases in the price of feed. When we look at the recent increase by our local supplier, we're talking about a $9 increase, which is equivalent to about 20%. And we have this, and you made a point, we no longer have a scenario in Barbados where farmers feed pig scraps or chicken scraps, just the rice from the pot and so on. They actively engage in a nutrition plan for their stock with a window of to market of about 3 to 4 months. So what it means is that you have a scenario where you're going to be asked to spend more to get that pig or that chicken to market. My concern, as we look at it from the perspective of the industry, and certainly within the Pig Farmers Association, yes, there are farmers, but more importantly, if we look at the FAO's definition of food security, it talks about people having at all times physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, right, safe, and nutritious food to meet the needs of the dietary needs and food preferences for active lifestyle. Yeah? So we're not saying that we're at the point in Barbados now where we are going to be running to the hills, but we're saying that it's now become very critical for the assessment to be done to see what impact food prices will be having on all of Barbadians. We are a resilient people. We are one that looks for solutions when problems emerge. But certainly, it has to be the responsibility of all of us to find solutions for the Barbadian public.
So some of those solutions, I mean, I know that there are discussions going on, but the government having to be able to cushion some of that for a couple of months, and unfortunately, they can't do it. Now, I'm not an economist, but of course, the manufacturers of these feeds, they obviously have staff to pay and they have their expenses. And in order for them to maintain their company, they obviously have to raise the prices onto the farmers who obviously have to raise theirs to the supermarkets. The supermarkets then have to raise theirs to us. My question is, even though we talk percentages, let's just break it down a little bit. When we talk about 19% increase, I don't know, I have not been to the supermarket. I don't know if James can answer this. Do you have an idea what we're talking about in terms of a chicken now? If I spent whatever per pound, what it is now, and my end game, because I know that we were looking at close to $20 or $20 as it is before this for a chicken. Am I looking at $25? I'm not sure. I haven't been in. Obviously, the change took place a couple of days ago, so I would imagine that the stock that is there from before would not reflect the prices as yet, possibly, but meat goes pretty fast. So I would imagine that those prices have been hiked already. Do you have any idea roughly to the Barbadian public what we going to pay for a chicken?
Yeah, remember that production is a continuing process. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, from the time the price would have increased, mm-hmm. farmers now would have already started to be purchasing the increased cost at an increased cost. It also means, therefore, that it's a cash flow issue, because, for instance, chickens that would have been maybe started at the end of this week, certainly they would have consumed some of the feed at the more expensive price. Mm-hmm. And then it goes on and it goes on. But because of the fact, too, that in most cases, a lot of farmers have had cash flow issues, it means that there might be that farmers will have to adjust their prices very soon in order to make sure that they can meet their cash flow commitments as we go into the coming weeks. So it is a question really of what is the cash flow of the individual enterprises, And really, do they have enough cash flow? Because what it means really is that you have no budget, increase cash flows in order to purchase the feed that is required to help those chickens that are in stock come forward. So it is not a simple thing. I think each individual producer is going to have to look and see where the impact is likely to be. For instance, in some cases, we've had some persons indicated that you could have around a 17% increase in the price of the final product. A lot of it has to do with the efficiencies that they have on the individual farm enterprises. So it is not a straightforward answer at this time. And the other issue that we need to recognize is that we don't have that level of collaboration between producers in order to say that they can fix the price. Because usually it is through a process of trial and error in some cases, and then not every producer has their cost right in front of him that he can actually determine, well, this is what it is. So I think that as we go through the next 2 or 3 weeks, they will give some firm indication as to where the prices would actually settle.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of don't understand how it works. I will always declare that I'm not a finance person, and most of us aren't. So I will put those finance questions to Henderson Williams, which I understand wears a couple of hats: finance, human resources, etc. What are some of the things then, Henderson, that we can look at? I mean, can we not? Are we looking at imports at a cheaper deal? Where are we looking? Because we need corn, we need soybeans. What are some of the things that we can do, suggestions in terms of imports, hunting around for the best deal?
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. When we did economics, you remember the point that they said that the long-term curve is really a combination of short-run curves, right? So in the short run, we can't vary the cost in the way that we can for the long term. And because of the initial impact, we have to, as James kind of alluded to, we're going to be doing some analysis to try and figure out what is that point, because that is not taken lightly either within the Pig Farmers Association, the BAS, or the co-op. We will be meeting to determine what is that point, because at the end of the day, consideration is always given to the elasticity of the product and the overall impact on the persons who we serve. And our main interest is really to serve the interests of Barbadians. As you said, there are a lot of opportunities in relation to the things that we could possibly be looking at. But every time we consider a possibility or option, there are consequences. For example, if we were to say that we rely solely on imported feed, then there's an issue and a catch, because the issue with imported feed is the availability and, again, the security and the timeliness of the feed getting here, etc., etc. There are jobs linked to the local economy, and the local producer have persons employed. And all those things have to be considered when we look to alternatives. Certainly one of the things that we have considered is to look at a bulk buying scenario where we go to the producer and say, hey, we have 150 farmers or 300 or 600 farmers. We want to be able to buy in bulk, and as a result, we want to get the price down. And those things work to the benefit of the ultimate consumer. So there's a lot is going on. The global economy is really topsy-turvy. The price of corn is really going crazy, and we recognize that the Chinese space is taking up a lot of it. We're not getting the kind of yields from the markets that we would normally rely on. So there are a ton of combination of things that are really causing a burden on this particular scenario.
So what about places like Guyana, our friends in Guyana, with the land that we may need to do these things and sort of talk to our family and friends in Guyana, Suriname? Are we looking at that? Because I don't think we have the acreage, as someone said to me yesterday, to plant enough corn that will be able to help the situation. Because people would say, but why don't we do it ourselves? I want you to explain why can't we plant corn to the extent to utilize, to feed all these animals?
But Joyanne, strategically, you just don't wake up tomorrow and do these things. And I think we have failed at the level of the region to plan effectively and strategically as we proceed. I remember some years ago the issue of corn, and I think the Belizeans made the first step in terms of proceeding to plant corn. We have been trying to push areas such as, say, Guyana, Suriname, which have huge land resources that could be possibly used for the purpose. But it has not happened. And I think because of the fact that, yes, we are CARICOM in many cases, but you must have a collective will in CARICOM in order to do it. And furthermore, you must have the resources. So we are at this stage now, and we are thinking about doing something that we, if it was to work, we should have started now. It should have started at least 3 to 4 years ago, and then to mobilize resources in that direction. But we haven't done it. And I think, yes, it's an option, but again, the option can only be, you can only see the option 3 to 4 or 5 years down the road. The thing is that it doesn't work like that. In the immediate future, what we have is a situation where, because of the change in terms of climatic events in some cases, I mean, when you look at Argentina didn't have a good harvest this year, neither did Brazil. Of course, there are always challenges in the U.S. in terms of, looking at the yields. Apparently, they have been down somewhat. All of these things. So they have come together now in a perfect storm for corn. And our reliance on them has proven to be our undoing. The other thing is too that we must remember, I constantly hear persons talking about the importation of feed and things like that. The truth is that we are in a very competitive world. And I think, as Hendy hinted, the industry is not just farmers, because sometimes what a lot of us try to do is to put one section of the industry up against the other. It is not just farmers, because at the end of the day, we are talking about employment in the sector. The feed company have people employed, and not only them. For instance, there are certain services that are related, that are financed because of the existence of the feed company, because of the existence of the farmers. Farmers themselves buy in services, and they have impact in the economy. So when you're talking about these things, you also, about importation, what you're doing is replacing these services, which means jobs, which will not materialize again, because once the product is imported, that is it. The other point too, you have to look at quality. One of the things that we understand about feed in itself, we do have our problems. I'm not saying there's a perfect situation locally in terms of production, but feed is not something that stores that well. And the thing is that even overseas producers of feed will have issues in terms of mycotoxins, all these things. And I think really that the solution is that we need strategically to look at where we are now. We need to talk to our CARICOM neighbors, and maybe, as I have said before, get them to invest in areas where, for instance, we cannot invest in. One is corn, and I really think that we need to have that type of conversation at the level of, say, CARICOM, that convinces countries such as the same Guyana and Suriname, and to see whether or not they would want to look at the whole question of taking their huge land resource and first of all investing in corn. But also we must be able to establish those commercial and business relationships in order to make it work. And that is the other thing too, because if you don't establish them, at the end of the day, it still cannot work. The point is, so to, I think I want to hit farmers we have to recognize where we are now. As I said before, it is not a situation where you can have easy solutions. And in that respect, the BAS has embraced a strategy where we need to look at a strategy of cost minimization and reduction of where it is possible. So in other words, we have to seriously look and examine the way in which we do things and see whether or not we can, in terms of our farms, mobilize or do things differently. How do we retool in a more efficient manner? As a matter of fact, one of the discussions that we have been having is that, for instance, we have at the moment in government a whole incentive plan, which when you look at the whole incentive regime, a lot of it is not utilized on an annual basis effectively. So the question is, how do we take resources that have already been there, provided for, and redeploy them in a very strategic manner to help to improve efficiency on farms, which in itself could mean further reducing costs on farms, which will at least help to mitigate the impact of the increase in the price of feed. The other issue too, I think we
Let's get
hinted
to
on,
that, James. Let's
sir.
just stick a pin right there. We're going to be back after the break, and then we're going to
Okay.
talk about that other issue. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We're speaking to Mr. James Paul, CEO of the Barbados Agricultural Society, and Henderson Williams, Pig Farmers Association. He is their president, and he also sits on the board at the BAS. Continue, James. You, before the break, you were mentioning a few other things that you wanted to add on to your contribution regarding
Actually,
solutions.
the last one is water. Yes, please. The last one is water. Because, look, in prior to 2018, we had the water was still relatively affordable. But I think one of the challenges right now, and I think maybe if government wants to offer assistance to the farmers at this point in time, seriously, we need to look at water because water is a critical ingredient in many pig farming operations. As a matter of fact, I can't think of many ways it's not that critical an ingredient. And I believe if we really want to offer assistance, I think that we need to look at some type of rebate on the cost of water for those operations because in most farming operations, water has become an expensive commodity. Where prior to 2018, a farm that say had a water bill of say $5,000 a month, is paying at least around $15,000 a month. That is a $10,000 increase in terms of water. And we need to see, for instance, because of the unusual situation that we are in at the moment, how can we then creatively give assistance to those farmers? Because on the one hand, as Mr. Williams said, it is what has happened in terms of feed is not avoidable. You cannot, there's no way of you thinking that as the price of corn and soy has nearly, corn especially has nearly doubled, that you would not have an impact in Barbados. And irrespective of if you bring in the feed or whatever, you will still have to face the same issue at the same time. So why not, in the face of what is happening at the moment, we need to look to see how can we, at the same time now, reduce the cost of water because water is a critical input in farms, and in itself that can provide an immediate ease to what is happening in respect of feed.
Well, I can certainly agree with you there, James. As I said earlier before you came on, when I was at the Barbados Water Authority, that was something that was on the table. I strongly advise you to put it back on the table now. And I'm pretty much sure that BAS has made I remember making a plea on behalf of the farmers about the water situation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember something to that effect. But timing is everything, and it probably wasn't the right time then, but certainly now. And I say this too, maybe I'm biased. I'm getting into farming vegetables, and I am too concerned. And speaking about getting into a business now pertaining to produce and meat, Henderson, how are people going to survive? When people listen to this and they're thinking about, I want to set up a business as a pig farmer, they're turned off. I mean,
Right.
I would like to know in terms of the Pig Farmers Association, and you can generalize it and set up a little business. going about setting up a pig farm, license, is it a minimum, a maximum,
Right.
how many pigs in order to become a licensed pig farmer?
Right. There's no license that you require. What we would advise is that you, if you're interested, you contact the BAS, you contact the Barbados Pig Farmers Association, and hopefully we will be able to guide you through the process of understanding, because the fundamentals of setting up a pig business or chicken business or whatever, it's really the same as any other business, which is that you understand what the cost of running that business is, and that you have the resources and the cash flow to ensure that you can get your product to the ultimate consumer within the time frame that it is allotted to get that, to see the maximum return. So we will guide you through in terms of understanding things, in terms of the characteristics that you should be looking for, the ratio of boars to sows, and all that stuff, by being a member of the BS. And even if you're not a member of the BAS or the Pig Farmers Association and you call, we're always ready to assist in terms of helping people, because we understand the value of farming, not only as commercial activity, but as in the old time days, as they would have said before, when it was time for school, you had mothers raising chickens and pigs to make sure that they could get the necessary supplies for their kids, to ensure that they could feed the kids if there was an event that was coming on. And we want to have a situation where that does not go at a total loss, and where Barbadians themselves can see the value of setting up a small operation or even a huge operation, and certainly that it reaches down to the benefit of all Barbadians. So, of course, if you have a desire to set up a business, one of the things that you would want to do is to make sure that you have your ducks in order, that you understand requirements, and certainly farming operations is something particularly, you can't set it up in certain areas. If it's in a development, you may have a challenge and so on. So you need to understand that you have the land space, the proximity to other areas that it could be a concern. Biodigesters is something that we've been spending some time with, and the cleanliness of farms, so that it will not impact negatively on the environment and the people in the surroundings. But we are available always to assist persons in terms of giving direction, understanding the requirement in terms of what you need to develop the business, and certainly the financial requirements.
I can tell you, over the last year and a half, with a lot of job losses, etc., a lot of people want to turn to farming. I know a lot of people who said, I want to raise chickens. Some people said they want to do pigs. Some people are want to buy a cow and invest. But if you don't have the money to do those things, and as a person with sorry, God, bring this home, but you do know a little bit more about finance than all of us. Is there something that BAS has set up for guidance, or something to say, look, where can I borrow money? Some farmers can go to get that start that they need to set up a farm. Is that any information you can share with us?
Yeah, there are opportunities. There are investment. There's the trust loans that are available to persons. There, the credit unions. I would put a plug in for them. Credit unions have been there for individuals in terms of helping them to do all kind of business.
Really?
The cooperative model works. Yeah.
No, I thought that when you go to the credit union, it was like, I want to build a house, they want to get a car. But I wasn't so sure if they would help you then for a small business. Thanks for telling me that. I'll be making a call.
Absolutely. In terms of
after the show,
fish vendors, any kind of hawkers and so on, they're members of the society. That's what they call the poor man bank. They used to call it the poor man bank. I'm not sure if it's so akin to that title anymore. But certainly they still do a good job in terms of assisting small entrepreneurs and so on. The Small Business Association, they have a collective of persons who have resources to assist. We at the BAS and the Pig Farmers Association, we're actually pushing to have a cooperative model for farmers managed by the BAS, where we can have funds on lend to farmers as well. So, come on board and participate in those kind of initiatives. There are cooperatives around that, also farming cooperatives, that assist persons in getting establishment and give them the necessary support that they require to have their operations going.
James, do you find that you get a lot of buy-in with your members in terms of from the various groups that fall under the BAS. When I say that, do they think that you kind of support their interest by, do you sell and help them sell their produce then? Can you say to BAS, listen, I got a lot of tomatoes, I can't get them off, I need some help? But is that something that you guys kind of intervene and say, well, okay, we will assist you somehow with the sales aspect of the produce?
We can. And actually we have, and we do still currently assist members in getting produce off. But in order for it to work, you have to have a few things in place, which is that, for instance, we try to encourage farmers that if you have a plan on an annual basis or an idea of the crops that you want to plant, it's like what we call a planting program, where you would outline during any particular year, a point in the year, look, these are the crops I'm planning to put in the ground and when. And then, of course, you can actually have estimated harvest dates that you would know, for instance, okay, this is when I expect these crops to come in terms of harvesting. That is not something that is difficult, but one of the issues is that we do find it difficult to get the cooperation of farmers in terms of giving us that information. And what usually happens is that farmers sometimes wait, even if it's the same day that they've harvested the crop, to call you and tell you that, we have some crops here, better not be squash, better not be onions, better not be cucumbers, and we are ready to get it. We want you to buy from us. But it just doesn't work that way, because sometimes you already have made commitments with other farmers for purchase, and then we have to look for markets. That's one of the things that I think people need to appreciate, that we do have to look for markets. As a matter of fact, we have worked out that one of the reasons why you have the challenge of of importers or of supermarkets importing goods is because of the fact that we do not have the information available to us readily to tell them, listen, please don't import anything in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because we have, say, a crop of cucumbers coming on or a crop of sweet potatoes coming on, because we are not able sometimes to get the full cooperation of all the farmers in terms of letting us know what is happening, what they have. And do not just wait until, for instance, you just marketed the crop and you have it now prepared, packaged, and everything else, and call us and tell us that I have some sweet potatoes to sell, please buy from me, because it might be that you already are committed to other farmers in terms of purchasing that particular commodity. So that is a real issue. But again,
we got some.
Mr. Williams indicated.
Go on.
Sorry?
No, go ahead. Go on.
Yes, as Mr. Williams indicated, we are trying, though, to get farmers in a more cooperative setting. We have a few farmers that, even in terms of the school meals program, we supply, but we have been able to get farmers to schedule the planting of crops in such a way that suits the program. And we want to expand that in other ways. But it means farmers have to commit to scheduling the growing of crops. They have to grow the things that they're going to grow when they say they're going to grow it. So that, and then even if there's crop failure, we will then be able to say backup plans. But we need to know. And that's the thing about it.
We have some comments coming in on our Facebook page as well. And one of the comments, the person was saying that people should go back to, or should become vegan. And I want you to let us know if it's also going to impact vegetables, because I understand that there may be some price increase to vegetables as well as a result of the increase of all of the other things externally, whether it be freighting and soybean and corn and feeds. How would vegetables be impacted, and to what extent?
But I don't know. I mean, the thing is, if everybody went vegan, that means no pork will sell, and he knows that, and we won't have any.
We definitely don't want that.
Well, that ain't gonna happen. That ain't gonna happen, but here, not in Barbados. I would not be able. So Saturdays, there's no way that people would not. It's like more pork for everybody. Well, not.
Right.
Continue.
Yeah, but I mean, we have to have a balance. And look, I believe that we will see some adjustment in the market, and sometimes, the immediate reaction is that, look, there was a postponement on this price increase. Where I will tell you, we knew, or we had advance warning of this increase from December last year. of November, because we saw the trends on the horizon. It was there. The thing about it is that we thought that it would have been temporary, but it was not temporary, because the time that happened back in 2012, it was temporary. But on this occasion, it just doesn't work out to be that way. It just proved to be. This seems to have a higher level of permanence than then, and it seems to be trying to trend towards a new normal. But I really think that as things, as if we can increase production of grains worldwide, it will help. But what is the complicating thing here too is the whole question of transportation. I don't think people have, from what I've been hearing in terms of how importers speak, when you look at the prices on the international market, the cost of transport has gone up considerably. This is not, I know people are saying, people are pushing up prices, but when you start to see in terms of the price to ship a container of a commodity here, it has really gone up. And that is what I'm saying, that this last resort tendency of people say, bringing the import the feed. That's not the answer either, because I don't think people appreciate that, look, this thing is worldwide, it is pervasive, and I think strategically for us in Barbados and in the region, it means so that we have to start to take seriously some of the things that we have not been taken seriously in the past. And in terms of vegetables, yes, it is. You're going to have, not necessarily because of corn, because that's not, they don't use feed, but in terms of other inputs, for instance, for them, the price of fertilizer, all of that is going to start to go up, and the other things, of course, that you use in terms of vegetables, they've already started to go up. The increases have already been there. Spray cans, just think of it, Ryan, and you can see that there will be an impact. But we are living in a new normal, and that's the whole thing, and we have to adjust.
Well, another person on Facebook made a comment and said that we should get back to this backyard raising chickens, and which then lead me to ask the question, even though you kind of smile at it about the pig feed that I know people used to get the scraps. Who's stopping them from finding other ways to feed chickens that may not be acceptable because they need to make $1? Who's managing that? Who's advising them? Okay, if you can't use this feed, do you use rice? That's back in the day type of thing. I mean, I know we've moved away from that, but don't be surprised if people who are trying to make some money from raising a small set of chickens may revert to those types of practices.
But again, for instance, I don't think people appreciate how far we have gotten in terms of breeds of animals and birds. The first chicken took, I think, something like months, or a few months, to actually reach the market. Today, now it gets 7 weeks, and I want to disabuse people's mind that is as a result of some type of thing that it's just what we would call genetic manipulation. That through a process of breeding, you breed out certain genetic traits and features some birds. So now today, instead of taking months before you get a bird to maturity, it's by a process of genetic selection, natural selection, you now could do it in 7 weeks.
So you mean you're pumping them with some hormones that then will be passed on to us?
There's no.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure.
No hormones. No, I'm serious. Yeah. There's no hormones.
Yeah,
even in terms of the traits. Again, a process. For instance, Joyanne, you are. I know women don't talk about how to do that, but you are not a slim person, correct?
Far from it. Good. Not even gone past pleasantly plump.
Right. Now, if I suppose I preferred persons like yourself who not plump, but in that in between range, all I need to do is to make sure that in terms of the process of breeding, I select individuals who possess your physical characteristics, and make sure as we go through that we consistently only allow those persons who have those physical characteristics to go ahead. So after a while, you breed out, say, slim characteristics and too fat out of the population. That is how it is done. It's the same process of genetics. And he could tell you on his farm, when he sees an animal that has certain traits, that is the one that he's going to hold back for the purposes of breeding.
He's not going to hold back the one that, for instance, doesn't, for instance, get to who's too small or who doesn't have a good hind leg, or all of these things are what people are looking at. So it is that process of natural selection is how it happens. But why you also mentioned that those animals require, for instance, I can't go and feed you certain foods to maintain your body weight or to feel healthy. You need a balanced diet on an ordinary basis to at least maintain your energy levels and be able to be productive. The same thing applies to animals. So I know there's this concept that you could just, as in the old days, take anything and throw it at them. But the reason why animals perform so well to its diet, in that you feed them a diet of nutrients that helps them to be able to grow healthy and strong, so that, for instance, they get to market very quickly and you are able now to have a quality animal at the same time. That is what happens.
Okay,
So,
well, when we come back after the break, I'm going to talk to Henderson about those pigs and how plump we can get them. So we'll be back after the break.
We'll talk a little bit about food security as well.
Exactly. We'll be back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. Now we're going to speak to Mr. Henderson Williams about two words I've been hearing over the years all the time: food security, food security, food security. Tell us about this food security, where we're at in Barbados, and how promising it is for us to have that level of food security that we've been talking about. And I don't mean just this government. This is from government to government to government. It is very important. We need to eat. It is disturbing to me and many Barbadians that when we go to the supermarket, the $100 now is half of a bag, or not even. The cost of living has gone up. We know that. We know it's no one's fault in particular that there's so many things happening. But talk to us about the food security. Let's give us some hope. You're on mute, Henderson. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's the point where the BAS and the Pig Farmers Association, we want to emphasize the feed companies and everyone else, based on what is happening in the global economy. When people talk about food security, some people do believe that's a situation where we have barns and then there's war, so we save up food for that purpose, and then we are food safe and we have food security. It's a little bit more than that. I think governments over time has done a very good job of ensuring that Barbadians are fed and that they're healthy and they get the variety that Barbadians like, and so on. One of the challenges that has come to fore is with this epidemic, this situation, this pandemic, that has taken over the world. It has disrupted the normal freight routes. It has disrupted production in ways that we could not have anticipated. We had a meeting yesterday with BAS, and one of the farmers was clear to say that in certain locations, farmers are actually having to butcher and kill, stock in young as a result of the impact of COVID. All of these parameters and factors have had a tremendous impact on Barbados to date. And to ensure that we have a scenario where Barbadians continue to have that level of comfort and safety and security in terms of ensuring that they get the nutritional value that they're accustomed to, the variety that covers the lifestyle, as Brother James Paul spoke about. It means that all of the players, James will talk to you about the value chain in relation to the production process and agriculture. It is important that all of the players in that value chain understand that they have a tremendous role to play in ensuring that the Barbadian populace, that the people that we have on island continue to have that level of security in relation to food. Right? So that's why we are so concerned about what is happening. And that's why we have been having a scenario where engaging all of the individuals and a cry out, a carrying cry or call to the Ministry of Agriculture as the entity who is responsible for food safety and security on island from the government perspective. Understanding full well, because we've been making that call and to government over the past weeks and months, and there's a school of thought that suggests that the role of government isn't to intervene in, public sector, into private sector activity, but a government's role is that of facilitation. So on one hand, they have a responsibility to make sure that all is well, but at the same time, private enterprise has to continue to do that. But when we get into a crisis scenario, although we have an import scenario and maybe an issue in relation to transportation, although we have an issue in relation to production, we still have to be cognizant of the fact that we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that when we look at our profit margins, given the crisis that we face, we may have to give up on 2% or 10% or whatever, but at the same time, we have to do a balancing out, right? And that's the view that we have at the BAS. That's the view of the Pig Farmers Association, and they will do everything in terms of their part to try to ensure we can't keep prices constant if the production and operation issues continue to increase. But we will always be responsible in our actions to ensure that Barbadians continue to get what is required within our capacity as individual participants in the process.
Well, I have a question here from someone that came into my phone that you talk about increasing prices in chicken and other processed meats. They're wondering if that includes beef, because cows normally just have grass and some other. Is that all meats across the board that they're asking if they will see an increase in all meats?
Yes. Yeah, so here's the challenge. We talk about production and we say, cows just eat grass. Cows don't just eat grass. Cows have a certain amount of feed that the persons who produce produce the beef that they have to put into their operations. Similar in terms of the milk production, similar with sheep production. That belief that you just feed them grass is really misconstrued. There's a lot more that goes into production. There's mineral, vitamins, and all kinds of other things that also go into that. The challenge that we face sometimes, because we have also been having an issue in some areas where we see on the shelves of some of the outlets or maybe some wholesalers of products that are brought in from either outside of the country, packaged nicely. When we look at the economies of scale within those regions, they can maybe afford to have the item here at a cheaper price. But what do we do when we do that? We stop production locally. We stop the jobs that we're having locally and potentially put at risk our overall, again, security in terms of our food locally.
Another question: if I become a pig farmer, are there any rebates that I would get from government similar to that in agriculture, where you're plowing, etc.? So, if you're going into pigs, chickens, is there any rebate at all that you can for your investment?
Yeah, Yeah, the Ministry of Agriculture, as James Paul alluded to, there are a whole slew of incentives and rebates that have been put in place for farming. As some of them as much as 50%, and in some cases maybe full rebates. So there are things in place, and in relation to the point that Brother James raised in terms of that genetic composition for an output in terms of a pig. The insemination program that is run by the Ministry of Agriculture has been there to kind of increase the stock. So we're able to get the kind of results that we want in shorter time to market. So there's a ton that's going on. We just need to be working together and cognizant of all the challenges that we face, and make it, that we continue to work together to make it, the best place and the best scenario for Barbadians.
James, I can't let you go unless I ask this question that everybody's concerned about. So prices probably going to go up. Farmers are going to have it hard, and then we got something called pre-deal larceny, that after you work real hard, this is what it is. Are we seeing a lot of that, or hearing about a lot of that, because it's not always reported publicly? But you may have some inside information if you've seen an increase in theft in crops, etc., animals.
But since the curfew, we have not heard any significant reports of any farmers losing produce. Although I think there was before where there are still instances where farmers do lose either animals or vegetables, crops. So it has not gone away. All we can do, of course, is to try to see if we can look at developing new strategies and ways of trying to detect it or prevent it at the same time. We actually have had some discussions, I know, with the police force in terms of the new proposed act, but at the end of it, it has to do with the vigilance that the farmers themselves exercise. There are some other things that can be done, certainly, and we should look at them. But I think on this whole issue of pre-deal larceny, we're in a very difficult situation, and especially agricultural commodities are not something that you can take and put in a bank vault or put in a store, hide it away. It is just not like that. It is challenging, and I anticipate that as if the economy continues to, the difficulties continue to increase, it can get even more challenging. So it is not something that we should dismiss as lightly. That farmers do from time to time experience it. In some cases, it can be very significant, and we need as a farming community maybe to come up with cohesive strategies that we could move with. One of the things, of course, I think, again, especially in those areas where you do have a lot of farms. In other countries, they have tried it where we have the neighborhood watch concept. But really what it is that a group of farmers in an area work together to actually try to monitor what's happening, provide the level of intelligence that is required, to make sure that they keep an eye on the crops. And of course, the technology is changing all the time. We're getting all types of technology applications, which some farmers have already begun to utilize.
Well, I know I can get a lot of questions after this show because people are shy to call in and they can probably harass me a little bit, but here's the question. Joanne, I want a little piece of land from the government to start a civic, start my little agriculture. So is there a program, Land for the Landless, program that you may be able to mention? I know you may not, I don't want you to speak on behalf of the minister, but you must know if there is a program that people right now who are jobless, looking for land at an affordable price to lease agricultural land. Do we have, and is that something that the government is doing? That we can help them?
Of course, I think there's not a wrong, but the problem is if you're talking about people who now say want to get into agriculture, it's a process. And it is not going to reap immediate results. One of the things, for instance, I think we have to recognize is that there is a minimum size of undertaking for an agricultural operation. Even in crops, there's a minimum size because, if unless of course they're doing what we will call in commodities that are very intensive and high price. That's a different matter. But it all depends. And the thing is really that government doesn't have all the land. But so sometimes what people have to do is to try
Wrap
to
up.
negotiate with persons who have tracts of land and lease. That is also an option that's also available to those who want to get into farming.
Well, I hear you, but they're very adamant, and of course, we want to help people regarding
Yes.
this because, I mean, in all fairness to people who have lost their jobs, etc., we would want to help. And agriculture is it's not an easy task, and I can get into that after the break because we got to take a break because some people figure, oh man, it's just easy. It's not something you want to turn them off from, but you got to put in some work. But we'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we do have to wrap up, but Mr. Paul, James Paul, I'm actually calling you Mr. James Paul at the end of the show. I'm going to let you wrap up in a minute, and then Henderson, I'll give you the final word. So, James?
But I just want to say that, look, these are tough times. The BS is constantly trying to find ways that we can assist farmers. But I think, again, the best way that we can assist farmers at this point in time is to respond to the increases and to look to see what can be done differently in order to help to reduce, to contain or reduce the cost of operations of farms. In that regard, we need to examine what we are doing to see how we can improve on the processes. And again, one of the things that I'd love to do is if we can encourage farmers to act jointly together in terms of accessing inputs at cheaper prices. That also is one of the strategies that we're going to move with. Hopefully, Joyanne, we could be able to still keep the putting the sauce for you on Saturdays on the
Please do.
table, and we will have an enjoyable day.
Thank you so much, James. Henderson, final word at you?
Well, again, I want it to be known that yes, we are in difficult times, but nothing is above us. As if we work together, if all of the persons who are part of the process understand that they need to play their part. I remember when it came to a situation, particularly in an organizational environment, and things were tough. We always had a situation where people started to talk about productivity improvements because we need to tighten the belt and so on. And then when things when that dissipated, when that situation went away, all of the creative ideas that we had kind of just went out the door as well. I believe that this is a time for Barbados to really say, let us hunker down. Let us work together. All of the persons who have a possible input to the solution, don't stay in your corner or don't operate within a silo. Come together. create the solutions that will be beneficial for all of us. And I believe if we take that approach, there's nothing that we would not be able to do.
And if I could add my 2 cents, because I am a registered vegetable farmer, I'm now starting out. I'm going to look this camera right in the eye, and I'm going to speak to the government of Barbados on behalf of the farmers and beseech you to kindly consider a reduction in the rates of water to the farmers only. We're not asking for much, just to the farmers only, and see if that can help us out. I know that discussion started in 2018. We're here, we're in a pandemic. We do need to survive. We need to our businesses need to thrive, and people do need to afford to eat. But we're hoping that the government would seriously consider reducing the water rates to the farmers only. And I know, Mr. Stafford, if you're still the chairman of that relief board, that you are watching and you are listening. So I'm hoping for some consideration. And I say that as someone who's trying to start a little farm, and I'm hoping that I would get the opportunity, as well as all of the other farmers out there. So I know, James, you might not be able to do it, and I know, Henderson, you might not be able to do it. So I am begging for someone in government, particularly the Prime Minister, and I know she listens, and I know she listens to the people, and I'm pretty much sure that something will be done, including the inputs with the co-op, etc., for people to get together to buy as a way forward for all farmers. So I'm leaving that one right there for the public, and see where it lands, and hopefully it will land in somewhere positive. Gentlemen, I want to thank you. Thank you, James, and thank you, Henderson.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Well, as we come into the end of our show, that was, from my heart, a genuine plea for farmers in this country. But it's not only about the farmers, it's about the fact that I want to be able to go to the supermarket. I want you to go to the supermarket. I want us to be able to eat, but I also want to see people employed. And I know that prices have to go up. We understand that, but we need to find a balance somewhere. In regard to the COVID and the vaccines, with what we discussed earlier with Dr. Charles, we are not here. I am not here to encourage anyone that they must take a vaccine. However, I took one. I made sure I made that decision for my 21-year-old daughter who could not make it for herself. So whatever happens, I have to live with, and I accept that. But I'm hopeful that when you are making your decisions, that you listen to the right information, you listen to the right people, and then make a decision. And even if it's not to have a vaccine, just do no harm. If you could just remember that one simple rule, do no harm, and then you'll make the right decision. Even if that is not taking a vaccine, it means that you're always going to be mindful that you can spread germs. If you have COVID, you can spread it because you're not vaccinated. And even if you are vaccinated, you probably can spread it. And I'm hopeful that maybe the government will continue to allow people to who don't want to vaccinate, or even vaccinated, wear masks, sanitize, and that's the most that we can do. So until we meet again on Monday, please take care, be safe, God bless. I'm Joanne Haig, and this has been Face It and Fix It.